UFC 294, Makhachev versus Volkanovski 2, full card predictions. Starting at the very bottom, making my way to the top as always. The first fight is Bruno Silva taking on Sharabutin Magomedov. Um, so the pick, I'll say right away, is Sharabutin Magomedov. Bruno Silva, he's a kickboxer. He's got a ton of power. 20 of his 23 wins or something like that have come by way of knockout. He's not a grappler by any means. Been submitted 7 times. Doesn't have any submission wins on his record. And he does gas out pretty badly as well. We've seen in the GM3 fight, that GM3 fight was awful, from an awful look from him. Not only did he get submitted by GM3, he got rocked, dropped, and then submitted by Mearshart, who's nowhere near the striker of a Magomedov. Um, Comes back, beats Brad Tavares, and then loses to Brendan Allen. I think Sharbut Magomedov is going to have the striking to be able to beat a guy like Bruno Silva. Um, Magomedov, he's not really as. I mean, he has decent punches and stuff, but he's mainly a kicker. That's the best part of his game is his wide array of kicks. He can throw leg kicks, body kicks, like spinning stuff. Like he throws a bunch of different stuff like that. Even when you're in the clinch, he's very dangerous. I think if it does go past the first round and the second and the third round, I can see Magomedov trying to wear down Silva, trying to hurt him bad to the body by landing knees in the clinch, maybe trying to land an elbow as they separate. I just think the overall better striker in this matchup is going to be Magomedov. Silva he always has a chance in the first round for a knockout. There's always that puncher's chance, but if he doesn't find the knockout on Magomedov early, I think Magomedov, kicks him to the body, works the body a little bit, zaps the cardio, and then maybe comes up top and finds a finish. But the pick is definitely going to be Magomedov there. Moving along, we have Jinyu Frey versus Victoria Dudakova. Um, Jinyu Frey is not a good fighter. She's 11-9, 38 years old, versus a 24-year-old Victoria Dudakova, who hasn't really proven anything in her own right either. But Dudakova, she's going to look for the takedowns here. I know Jinyu Frey has decent takedown defense, but at the end of the day, Victoria Dudakova is much younger. She's not on a 3-fight losing streak, and despite neither, I think Jinyu Frey actually her striking compared to Victoria Dudakova's might actually not look terrible, but I just feel like Victoria Dudakova's got to be able to get the takedowns over someone that's 38. Her last fight, she fought Estela Nunez, who got hurt after the first takedown attempt in the first round. Couldn't really see much there, but before that, beat Maria Silva on the Contender Series. Made some grappling mistakes there. I think she does need to make some improvements when it comes to some grappling mistakes, pulling yourself into in a mount, like when just certain things like that you have to watch out for because she is liable to make mistakes. And her being a minus 535, only being 7-0 compared to Jinyu Frey, who's been in the UFC for a while, is a little bit excessive. But I am going to go with her to win. Um, really, really an awful fight though. Not a little bit, a much better fight, at least on one side. We have Nathaniel Wood versus Muhammad Naimov. They're about the same age, 9-2 for Muhammad Naimov, 19-5 for the prospect Nathaniel Wood. I think Nathaniel Wood, although he's not a big featherweight, I know Muhammad Naimov just fought last time against Jamie Malarkey on short notice, and Naimov actually beat Jamie Malarkey, but I think that's due to poor fight IQ from Malarkey, as long as him, as well as him not being the best fighter in general. I'm not really high on Malarkey, especially after some of his last few fights. I think he's very over. I even overrated him. I think he's very overrated. He's a favorite in a lot of those fights too. I think Nathaniel Wood's the much better fighter than Jamie Malarkey as far as technical striking goes. I think he's a more technical striker. I think Woods, honestly, you could probably say he's better everywhere than Jimmy Malarkey. He's just a better fighter, better striker too. And Jimmy Malarkey was landing on Muhammad Naimov. I do think Nathaniel would be able to do the same. He's a much more proven UFC fighter. Naimov has that comeback win, comeback knockout against Malarkey. But besides that, I mean, he hasn't really beaten a lot of great competition on the regional scene. So ultimately, I think if Nathaniel Wood doesn't get dropped, multiple times here, if his chin can hold up, he's going to have the advantage in terms of speed. Obviously, the pure just a skill set advantage, but I just don't think mistakes will be made too much on the part of Nathaniel Wood. I think that's the one area where if he leaves himself open to get rocked by a guy like Naimov does have the power to hurt him, but outside of a knockout, it's hard for me to see Naimov putting together 3 good rounds against Nathaniel Wood. So the pick is definitely going to be Nathaniel Wood here. Moving along, really interesting one here. Anshul Jubilee versus Mike Breeden. Um, for Mike Breeden, he is 0-3 in the UFC. In fact, I think he lost a Contender Series fight as well. He's 10-6, 34 years old. Um, if you look at his fights here, you have Terrence McKinney, round one, gets knocked out in a little over a minute, loses to a decision to Natan Levy, and then loses in the first round to Alexander Hernandez. Now, look, Terrence McKinney and Alexander Hernandez, those guys are, pretty solid fighters at the weight class, so there's nothing too much to take away from him losing to both of them. Natan Levy, though, Anthony Romero in the Contender Series, like some of these guys, it just Mike Breeden, he's not beating the level of competition he wants. And you could say the same about Anshul Jubilee. Anshul Jubilee hasn't really beaten anyone either, but the thing I know with Anshul Jubilee is he is a fighter out of India. He has a ton of support. Um, Basically, the entire country of India is supporting him. Everyone's, hoping he can get the job done. He's kind of taken that role of being the fighter for your country. He's really taken that to another level with India, and you have to think, why did the UFC make a matchup like this? Mike Breeden just got knocked out, not too long ago by Terrence McKinney, coming back after only a few months to fight Anshul Jubilee, who's 7-0, a prospect that the UFC wants to market to, and that's India. I just don't see how Breeden. I mean, the only way I see Breeden winning this fight, he does have decent ability to, um, I guess you could say Homer Simpson and survive until the late, like a third round, and just take over and just land the volume. I do think Mike Breeden may have an opportunity if Jubilee gasses bad here, trying to finish him. But I think Jubilee, as long as he's smart, what he should do is, despite Mike Breeden actually, being able to get up from takedowns, as shown in his fight against Natan Levy, I don't really rate him that highly as a grappler, and he was able to take him down multiple times, not really control him, but I think Jubilee is pretty solid with his control. If Jubilee gets him down, he might be able to control him on the mat. Even if he can't control him on the mat, I still think he has an advantage in the striking. Mike Breeden's just very slow, very hittable. Jubilee, like I said, if he just picks his shots, stays careful, he's very strong on the front leg, so he could get his leg chopped up a little bit. But all it comes down to for me is one guy's, in my opinion, not in my opinion, one guy's clearly the younger fighter. One guy's 7-0 versus a guy that's coming off of 2 knockout losses and one loss to Natan Levy in the UFC. He missed weight he's 159 and a half pounds. So he already missed weight against Jubilee. That is another concern, that he's maybe not cutting that extra weight. Maybe that gives him a little bit of a cardio advantage, or maybe even like he can push in the later rounds. But I'm going with Jubilee. I've seen a lot. Excuse me. I've seen a lot of love on the Mike Breeden side this week. I don't really get it. He's not that good. The fight against Natan Levy, I guess, is what people are looking at to judge why maybe he can win this fight. I just think Jubilee should be a step ahead of Mike Breeden if he wants to be anything in the UFC. Next is Cedricus Dumas versus Abu Zaitar. Um, this is actually, I might shock some people here, but this is actually a fight that I really like for Dumas. I think this is a great spot for Dumas to show his ability. So I'm picking Cedricus Dumas to win. The reason I say a lot of people may be surprised to hear that is a lot of people are very confident in certain favorites, like Some people are saying Makhachev or Chimaev or Ikram, or there's a bunch of other guys that people are, Magomedov. Some people are saying that they think is going to win. I think Cedricus Dumas has a very good shot in this fight. As long as he doesn't get knocked out early, I think if he can survive the early onslaught from Abu Azaitar, I think he wins this fight, you know, 8 times out of 10, if not, 9 times, maybe not nine, maybe like 8 or 9 times out of 10 if he doesn't get knocked out in the first round. You know, I think as the fight goes on, Dumas has been in there. He's 8-1. His entire professional career, Cedricus Dumas, every single fight he's had was in the span of Abu Zaitar's last fight. So Cedricus Dumas has been getting all these fights in the last 2 years. You see in all these fights that he hasn't been in there against great competition, but Josh Frem, Cody Brundage, his last two, he's been trying to, train as hard as he possibly can. He wants to win. He wants to be in the UFC, 28 years old, versus the 37-year-old Zaitar. Been out for 2.5 years, not been active whatsoever. His last three fights were 2.5 years ago, 5 years ago, and then 7 years ago. He's fought 3 times in 7 years versus a guy Dumas that's fought, you know, 8, 9 times since Abu Zaitar's last fought once. So I definitely think Cedricus Dumas is taking this more seriously. I definitely think he could probably out grapple Abu Zaitar here. He's been putting in work on the mat. You could tell he's. I know it's like the Cedricus Dumas. He smokes a lot, and you don't know if he really has like a high IQ. I mean, he has tattoos on his face, so I would assume he doesn't. But in all fairness, I do think Cedricus Dumas should win this fight. When you're grinding hours in the gym and versus a guy like Abu Zaitar who's riding around in supercars and stuff, I think one guy's taking it a little bit more seriously. I think Dumas, he does have some decent striking, especially some of like his head kicks. He's got quick head kicks. He's got, not the best striking, but he can catch you and he can really hurt you. And his grappling, his wrestling is much improved. I think if Zaitar starts to gas, Dumas can take him down, beat him up on the ground, either win a decision or look for a ground and pound finish. So the pick for me is Dumas. Moving along, again, we have Javid Basharat versus Victor Henry. Now, I think this is a very entertaining fight. I think both guys, Basharat and Victor Henry, are very good. I think Basharat is going to win this fight. I think he is a little bit better than Victor Henry. Um, so I'll say this for starters. Javid Basharat, 28 years old, versus the 36-year-old Victor Henry. That's the first thing you have to look at. Javid is also an excellent striker. You see his striking, his range management, which is one of my favorite things about his game. He can really manage range very well. He's not a guy that gets hit a ton. And even when he did get hit against Mateus Mendonca 9 months ago in his fight, he got hit a few times in the first round, adjusted better, didn't really get startled or get off his game plan. He sticks with the game plan, has a very high fight IQ, good range management, and I think he's one of the best fighters in the bantamweight division, just as far as how he fights. For Victor Henry, I do think Victor Henry is, I think he's a good fighter. I think he's a good fighter. Definitely think he's a solid. He's not a very, I guess you could call him very meat and potatoes sort of. He's not the most flashy guy, but he is very solid. Um, I think Basharat should try to stick the jab out a lot, try to just stick and move, maybe throw some leg kicks, just try to, not try to get into a brawl with Victor Henry, not to try to engage too much. And then obviously the wrestling, Javid has, him and his brother Farid have shown that they can go to the grappling, they can go to the wrestling if they feel, uncomfortable on the feet. So I definitely think that's another aspect you have to add on to his game. I think Basharat wins here. He is a minus 600. I don't think I would. You should touch that price. Even in a parlay, it's like a lot of Javid's wins are via decision. So unless you think he absolutely dominates this fight for 3 rounds, but in a competitive fight, I just think I think Javid wins, but laying minus 600 is a little bit insane to me on a guy that could be competitive against Victor Henry. Next, we have Muhammad Yahya versus Trevor Peak. This is some people's, scrap of the night, fight of the night, whatever you want to call it. Not technical fight of the night. I'm just talking about just scrap of the night. And that's what I think this will be. I think this will be a scrap. I think Trevor Peak gets it done. I understand Trevor Peak has next to no real technical ability on the feet. At least he hasn't shown any thus far. All he's really done, Trevor Peak, is, really all he's ever done is throw standing hammer fist, big punches with all the power he has. He can fall over himself throwing as hard as he possibly can. Even his leg kicks, when he does throw them, like he throws everything in. He throws everything into every shot. He's trying to take your head off with every punch. There's no setting things up. It's just going right after you, looking for the kill. And against a guy like Muhammad Yahya, I honestly don't think Muhammad Yahya is going to be able to deal with Trevor Peak. I think this could be a first round win. I don't think Muhammad Yahya is complete, like a complete can, but he's been dropped before. His chin is definitely suspect. And when you're fighting a guy in Trevor Peak, even if he doesn't get flatlined, I think Trevor Peak's just going to put the pace on him. He's going to throw heavy shots. Even if it gets into the second and the third round, does Muhammad Yahya have the technical ability? Does he have just the fight ability in general to? I mean, maybe he could wear down Peak in the later rounds, but if Peak's throwing heavy shots at him, standing hammer fists, Muhammad Yahya has never seen something like that before, and now he's fighting in the UFC against a guy that's going to be coming right after him to take his head off. I don't know. He hasn't really fought the level of competition either that shows me that he can deal with someone like Peak. I'm going with Trevor Peak here. I when he was he's a minus 170 now. He was an underdog at the beginning of the week, like plus 115 or something. And when he was an underdog, I think that was definitely way better value than you're getting here if you're looking to bet it. Um, I still think he wins the fight. I definitely think he should win, in my opinion. But you know, minus 170 on Trevor Peak, it's like, I don't know. You're really rolling the dice on a guy that's throwing standing hammer fists. So that's the only thing there. But I do think Trevor Peak can win. Tim Elliott versus Muhammad Makayev. Is this the headliner of the prelims? It is. A lot of good fights in this card. A lot of interesting ones for sure. So Elliott versus Makayev. Um, Tim Elliott is a dirty cheater. Um, in his fights, he cheated. I know for a fact he cheated. I don't know about the Ultimarano fight against Tagir Ulanbekov. He was grabbing his gloves. He cheated multiple times in that fight. Got the win anyway. Beats Victor Ultimarano after that. I don't think Victor Ultimarano is really that great. He's actually, just looking at him, he just looks like stiff, awkward, not very good. Similar to Tim Elliott. Although Tim Elliott does have a higher grappling edge, not than Makayev obviously, but Tim Elliott has a decent grappling edge over some opponents in his career. I don't think that's going to be the case against Makayev. I understand Makayev nearly got submitted by Chafel Filo. That was very close. That knee bar, I don't know how he didn't tap to that, but if he doesn't tap to that, I don't see Tim Elliott being able to out grapple or out wrestle Muhammad Makayev. I think Muhammad Makayev could take down Tim Elliott. I think he can beat up Tim Elliott, and I think a lot of people are taking. This is another popular dog spot, similar to Mike Breeden. Mike Breeden was probably the most popular dog spot of the week, as far as what I've been hearing. Like people's videos on YouTube, everyone's saying Breeden, 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 and the lines come down drastically. Jubilee was a minus 400. Now he's only like minus 275, 280. So a ton of money's come in on him. You could say the same about Tim Elliott. I mean, a lot of people are really backing Tim Elliott here, think he has a better shot than the odds imply. I think at 36 years old at flyweight versus a 23-year-old, I don't think Makayev's knee issues are going to be. I hope they're not much of a factor because Makayev is a very elite, or eventually, I believe in the next few years, he will become an elite flyweight, whereas Tim Elliott was always 50-50. He beat some guys, but he also lost a lot of guys. 19-12 record, 8-10 in the UFC. If you look at his wins, Victor Altamirano, Tagir and Bekov, loses to Mateus Nicolau, beats Jordan Espinoza and Ryan Benoit, loses to Brandon Royval, Askar Askarov, and Davison Figueiredo. Like, he's fought a lot of good competition, but he's lost to most of the top level guys he's fought. I think Makayev, this could get a little bit close for comfort in certain areas, but I think overall Makayev should be able to win the fight, and beat a guy like Tim Elliott, who's not who's kind of like a UFC journeyman. Um, no disrespect to him, but that's just kind of what he is. And I think Kaiev is destined for greater things. Starting on the main card, the first fight, I understand why they made this on the main card. On the first fight on the main card, it is a very, very good fight. People are going to be entertained. Saeed Nurmagomedov versus Muin Gafarov. Saeed Nurmagomedov is the pick for me. He is a very good kickboxer. Um, his kickboxing is really his kicks. It's not necessarily as much as punches, but his kicks are very good. That's what he is. He's not a wrestler, even though his last name is Nurmagomedov. He is a stand up kind of kick. He likes to be at range. He likes to dictate the range, which Marwin Gafarov is going to try to give him some problems regarding that. Maybe Muin Gafarov tries to pressure him, land punches, maybe even press him up against the cage and try to wrestle. The thing with Nurmagomedov, though, is he he has a nasty guillotine, and he can really submit guys too. Like he submitted pretty high level guys with that guillotine. Sedu Kakramanov, also beat Cody Stamen. Like if you shoot a sloppy takedown, even if it's not sloppy, if you leave your neck on the on the wrong side, he'll snatch it up right away and he'll submit you. He's got long arms. I think his grappling just by itself or his wrestling isn't the greatest, but he, like I said, that guillotine is very sneaky. I don't know if Muin Gafarov has fought anybody like a Said Nurmagomedov before, someone that's like on that next sort of level, like top 15 level, because Said Nurmagomedov had a very competitive fight with Jonathan Martinez, who's an excellent kickboxer, and Martinez was trying to grapple with him a lot in their fight, press him up against the cage. So I do expect Muin Gafarov to try to do that. I do think he'll probably have decent cardio here, but I don't think he'll be able to beat a guy like Said Nurmagomedov, a guy who's fought much better guys in the division. A few years older, sure, but still should have plenty of speed, plenty of ability to just pick apart Muin Gafarov on the feet en route to a decision or possibly even a knockout, depending on how things go as the rounds wear on. Next fight we have is Ikram Aliskerov versus Warley Alves. Um, Now, when Ikram Aliskerov was first scheduled to fight on the card, I believe the first fight he was supposed to fight was Costa before Costa got moved. Um, so originally it was Paulo Costa. It doesn't say here, but it was supposed to be Ikram versus Paulo Costa. Ikram actually was a very, very slight favorite in that fight, which a lot of people were, saying Costa was going to win. Costa was going to win, and then Paulo Costa was supposed to fight Chimaev, so they rebooked Nasruddin Imavov versus Ikram Aliskerov, and that one I was actually slightly considering picking Imavov just because I think his striking is probably a little bit cleaner. But in this one, up a weight class Warley Alves on short notice against Ikram Aliskerov. I'm picking Ikram Aliskerov. Against Costa or even Nasruddin Nimavov, I believe those are top 15 level guys. Costa I think is like top 10. Imavov's around the top 15. I think those guys give Ikram a lot of trouble in certain areas. I don't think Warley Alves, at this point in his career, gives Ikram that many problems. He lost a split decision to Nicholas Dalby. That's the first thing you have to point out. At welterweight, losing a split to Dalby, who's like he's like 38 or was he 38, 39 right now. Not a good look. Ikram Aliskerov's 30 years old. He should be coming into the prime of his career, or at least very close to it. Um, I do think Ikram's striking is very I'm not really the biggest fan of it. I don't think it looks that great. I think his wrestling and grappling certainly is pretty good though. Worley Alves, he's got a guillotine. I mean, he submitted some guys, including Colby Covington, with it back in the day. But I mean, it's Worley Alves. He's 14-6. He got brutally knocked out by Jeremiah Wells. That was 2 years ago. Lost to Nicholas Dalby 8 months ago. How much can you really expect from a guy like Worley Alves? I don't think he's going to submit Ikram Aliskerov if Ikram gets him down. I think there's a very small chance of that happening. And even on the feet, outside of a first round knockout, I don't think Worley Alves has much of a chance here. I think Ikram's better pretty much everywhere, and I think he deserves to be a favorite. Minus 600 is pretty wide, but I understand why. He is 14-1. His only loss, by the way, was to Hamzat Chimaev, who brutally knocked him out with an uppercut way back in the day. You can probably find that on YouTube if you want to look it up, but that was a bad, bad knockout. But since then, he's been very good. This is a featured fight next, and it is Magomed Ankalaev taking on Johnny Walker. I'll be honest, upon first glance of the watching these guys, I really wanted to pick a guy. I wanted to pick Johnny Walker. I wanted to pick Johnny Walker. I was really questioning myself about will I pick him, and I do think Johnny Walker is a solid underdog here. I haven't really picked many underdogs, if any, so far on the card, but I try to give my honest opinions. I'm not just going to pick someone if they're a big underdog and I think they have a good shot of winning. Maybe I'll pick them, but I don't just want to pick underdogs that I think don't really have a great shot. I did think Johnny Walker had a good shot when I first looked at this, and I still think he has a shot. But I think Magomed Ankalaev should win, and here's why. When I first thought about it, I was like, Johnny Walker, I know he's got that crazy style. Maybe he can implement the crazy style, catch Magomed Ankalaev off guard, maybe clip him, rock him, and try to finish him. Because Johnny Walker does also have some pretty good ground. Like when Paul Craig shot on him, and when he hit Paul Craig once, like he really rocked Paul Craig and finished him when he was trying to take Johnny Walker down. I don't think Mike Ankalaev is going to shoot the takedowns of a Paul Craig. Paul Craig's not a wrestler. Mike Ankalaev can wrestle Johnny Walker. Should be able to control him on the ground if he wants to. In the striking, I think he also has a good opportunity here. Johnny Walker, as much as I would love to give Johnny Walker a chance, and he does have a chance. I was really at the beginning of the week before I really looked into it. I was really heavily considering Johnny Walker, and I'm not saying he has no shot, but Magomed Ankalaev, if Walker tries to implement the style of Blachowicz by throwing a lot of low kicks, I think Magomed Ankalaev might be able to time him and throw a left hand right down the pipe. His straight punches are very good. His head kicks and stuff are very fast as well. He's very technical in his striking. He's not the better athlete. Johnny Walker is definitely the better athlete, but the better technical fighter is clearly Magomed Ankalaev. Johnny Walker makes a lot of mistakes. He does not have a good chin, and I feel like there's just too much going against Johnny Walker here for me to pick him. I have to go with Magomed Ankalaev. Um, would I be surprised if Johnny Walker clips him and somehow finds a way to win? Not really, but I do think the better fighter overall in the wrestling and grappling, and even in the striking, the guy that's technically better should win this fight. So I am going to go with Magomed Ankalaev here. Co-main event of the evening is Kamaru Usman taking on Hamzat Chimaev. Now this fight, I like Hamzat Chimaev. Usman's taking the fight up a weight class on short notice, and Hamzat was preparing for Paulo Costa, who's a big middleweight. Now he's taking a fight against Usman on short notice, who's a guy moving up in weight from 170. Not a small guy, Usman, actually a big, pretty big welterweight, but for middleweight, I don't know if that size and the power and everything is going to translate, especially against a guy like Chimaev. Now, Usman in his last fight against Leon, he lost that one. He didn't. I know it was a majority decision. I didn't really think Usman looked that great in that fight. I picked Leon to beat Usman in that trilogy fight. I just something was telling me like Usman. He's at the time was he 36 or 35? About to be 36 at the time. Now he is 36, about 36 and a half. I just thought like he's starting to come out of his prime. I don't want to say this is like I've heard some people saying this is like a Tyron Woodley situation. I hope it's not. I hope it's not like he doesn't turn into the next Woodley. But I could honestly see it, especially against a guy like Hamzat Chimaev. You're fighting a 29-year-old killer, Hamzat Chimaev, who's hungry to get the belt, who's been training as hard as he possibly can, beat Kevin Holland. He's been out for a year, but in that year, trust me, he's been working hard. I know, I know he's been working hard. And so Usman's definitely been, putting in work too, but short notice, has to fly all the way to Abu Dhabi, Chimaev's now living in Dubai, which is right, not far from Abu Dhabi, same country, obviously UAE. So I'm going with Hamza Chimaev here, and it's not only just because of the age and all that and the short notice. It's also because I think Chimaev is probably going to be the more powerful guy on the feet. Usman, he actually is a decent technical striker, but I think the power of Chimaev might overwhelm him. And if they get into wrestling exchanges, I think the wrestling exchanges actually favor Chimaev because Usman's moving up in weight. Chimaev's already a big middle. Chimaev's a big guy. I think he's manhandled some people and made it look easy and submitted them in the first round or ground and pounded them in the first round. I don't think he's going to be able to just ragdoll Usman. But at this stage in Usman's career, I could see Chimaev getting the better of the wrestling exchanges. And Usman's, jujitsu, sure, his wrestling's good, but his jujitsu, as seen in the Leon fight, it's nothing special. I don't want to say nothing special because Leon's a very well-rounded fighter, but he didn't show an ability to try to scramble or get up. I know he was in a bad position, but imagine if Chimaev gets in that position. Imagine if Chimaev has him in mount and is raining down ground and pound. I don't think Usman has a way to get out of that. Um, no, I know it's hard to do, but I am going to go with Chimaev. So I think on the feet or in the grappling, I think Chimaev's got a good chance of winning this fight. Um, I don't know how. Like I said, the power of Usman. Not sure how it's going to translate. Decent technical striking. I think if it gets extended, the fight could get interesting for sure. Because Hamzat is a guy that likes to go balls to the wall early. Main event of the evening, and it is Islam Makhachev taking on Alexander Volkanovski for the second time. Um, and I'm picking Islam Makhachev to win again. Before I get into this breakdown in particular, I do want to say I gotta respect, even if picking against them, I gotta respect Volk and Usman just for taking the fights against these killers, these younger guys on short notice in a spot, pretty much all the way across the world, and these guys for Islam at least, not even Islam for Hamzat, this is home for him, and for Islam, it's like a second home. So these guys pretty much have like the home field advantage here too. I think Islam, I thought he beat Volkanovski in the first fight. I thought it was a very close fight. I thought Volk had a lot of good moments. I think that was like an A+ performance from Volk. I think that was one of his best fights he's shown. Up a weight class, I thought he looked incredible. Honestly, I think Islam didn't perform as good as he could have. And I know I'm not taking anything away from Volk. I just think Islam's a better fighter than him. I think Islam's a better grappler, wrestler. And I think in this fight, Volk's coming in, not off the couch, obviously, but he's coming in on very short notice against a guy who's been training, has an entire training camp, a guy who is probably going to try to look to wrestle him and tire him out. I would say that's probably a smart plan for Islam, working in the wrestling and the grappling here. I know it's hard to take down Volk, it's hard to control him, but if he does get to his back, we saw what happened last time he got to his back. He took the entire round from Volk. The striking was even in the last fight, the striking, Islam had some moments on the feet. Volk had some big moments too, especially in the last round, but Islam had some decent moments on the feet. His striking is very improved from what we've seen against, I know he got his only loss was against Adriano Martins, and we've seen the improvements he's made in his striking, defense, and offense since then. I think those improvements may have been drastic. I think if you look at the age of these two guys, 31 versus 35, Volk is getting up there in age, especially for a weight class like this, a lightweight. If anyone can do it, if anyone can pull off a huge upset, it would be Alexander Volkanovski. I wouldn't be that surprised. I mean, it is Alexander Volkanovski. He's one of the best fighters we've seen in the UFC. Just an incredible, incredible fighter. Um, Nothing but respect for him and Usman for taking these fights. I just think, not even just in the grappling, just in the striking, I think he's been preparing for a guy like Charles who has a lot of power on the feet, who's very dangerous on the feet. Volk's definitely a very different style than Oliveira, but I do think Makhachev will be prepared enough on the feet. And I just think overall he's just a better fighter. I just think it comes down to that. I just think overall he's been doing it longer. He's been wrestling since he was, 4 years old, all his life with Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, um, who was the father of Habib, who was excellent. They've been wrestling together for their entire lives. I just don't think Volkanovski on short notice. And not only is the wrestling there, as I've mentioned multiple times already, the striking is there too now. So I think he's going to be a very dangerous fighter. And I think he gets this one done over Alexander Volkanovski and possibly finishes him too as the rounds go on. So thank you guys very much for watching. Um, a lot of great fights, a lot of Russians on this card. You have some fights that you could see the UFC is trying to build up certain fighters, but this whole fight card is just awesome. Can't wait to watch it. Thank you guys for watching this video, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.